So at its most basic level, a game is really just a set of rules and an input venue for players to manipulate those rules. Board games, video games, sports, even a crossword puzzle in the Sunday paper, they're all games. Now, traditionally, stories haven't been told by the game itself, but are about the events which unfold during the game. From the legend of Babe Ruth to Evo Moment 37, to whatever's happening to that guy with the yellow ball up his nose. Stories about games have traditionally been told by the micro decisions of its players, eventually being organized by storytellers into a sequence of events. Now let's take a deeper look at Evo Moment 37 here. What made this one of gaming's greatest esports moments? Was it Daigo's technical prowess on display, pairing all 15 hits of Chun-Li's super into a maximum damage combo to finish the round? Was it the fortitude to do it in a clutch moment under so much pressure? Well, yeah and no. And these are facts. They're undisputable. But the real reason it's such an incredible moment is because we, as gamers, can share in both of their feelings. We know what the exhilaration of hard-fought success feels like, or how the shock of having something well fought for taken from us. We have empathy for both players. We have an understanding of how insanely clutch such an outcome actually was. We even feed off the audience's reactions. These emotions are a shared social event that we're all part of. Now, given the rise of social media and streaming, many stories are being made every day within the confines of Fortnite and other hot multiplayer games. And it's not just the events inside the games themselves catching our attention. It's the stories about the very personalities of the streamers. The things that they say or do in and outside the games are our stories. When our favorite streamer suffers a horrible breakup and then you watch him crush his opponents in Fortnite, you're not just seeing him win, you're feeling his anguish because we've all been there. But not all games are built around the player's actions being the story. God of War, for example, is about Kratos, an anti-hero once guided by pure rage, now needing to move past that so he may raise his son who knows nothing of his past. And it takes place in a world meant to make the player feel small. The events of the story are important to frame the context, but the real emotion from the story comes from our own lives. It comes from the moments we've experienced, which allows us to have empathy for Kratos and his son. That feeling of rage and how difficult it can be to control it. That sense of responsibility towards someone who depends on you. When I had kids, it makes a big difference in your life. The shame we all feel for dumb things in our past and the real genuine fear that people we love may judge us harshly for them. The Last of Us is about surviving the zombie apocalypse and shotgunning clickers, isn't it? Well, at least on the surface it is. I mean, it's really actually about puberty and the death of loved ones and family bonds and the dangers of having hope and seeing it crushed. It's about the moments when Ellie loses herself in rage and Joel tries to hold her close to remind her that she's not alone. Again, it's about us. We all know what it feels like to lose someone close to us, to feel hope and have it crushed, to turn to family in times of need. The Last of Us reminds us how cold the wet air in the fall can actually feel, or how majestic a giraffe can be up close. And Naughty Dog plays on our empathy and reminds us of our own humanity. And even games that seem like they're made to embody the essence of fun can have an emotional component to them. Like Insomniac's Spider-Man really makes you feel like you're Spider-Man. Sure, there are emotional moments and some weighty topics and even an unexpected death in the game. But what stands out to me here is just how much it felt like I was Spider-Man. That feeling of swinging through the city, of having lightning reflexes, of having great responsibility with his great power. When I see a crime, I actually felt a bit torn between continuing the narrative and going off and saving the city. Insomniac did an amazing job of sparking my imagination, and they gave the fantasy enough sense of realism that I could immerse myself. And sometimes, the world itself can touch our emotions just as much as a character can. Now, Red Dead 2's Wild West felt It felt real to me. Like, their representation of everyday life is just astounding. Like, when an old steam engine would go by, I just watch it. I'd pour over all the incredible items in one of the general stores and then walk out and accidentally shoot somebody when I tried to run, then run from the cops forever. I mean, I'd watch the sun slowly set, wondering what the wisp of smoke in the distance could be. I'd practically feel the heat while standing in the sunshine in a field of wheat, or feel the chill of the cold when Dutch's gang were holed up in the start of the game, or smell a campfire as I listened to some drunk fool sing before passing out. Not only because of the artistry of the game, which was amazing, but because of my own life experiences. And in our game Moss, Quill may be out to save her Uncle Argus, but the emotional touchstone of the game is how she looks at you like you're the most important person in the room. How she'll react to moments of gameplay and share her feelings with you. How she'll show vulnerability by allowing you to pet her, or show excitement by asking you for a high five, or feel the adrenaline rush of a difficult battle and vent it by kicking a dead snake, something you wish you could do in that moment. It's feeling a co-presence inside a VR world that feels alive. It's the same feeling you get from your everyday life. Like, it's that sense of familiarity, but in this fantasy setting. It's just like having, your pet sit next to you when you were doing your homework in high school, or when your friend was so excited about scoring her first dream job and she shared the news with you. So if story is just as much about the emotional takeaway as it is about the events framing the emotions, I'd like to ask, are the linear events always necessary? And if the answer to that is no, it seems they may not always be, then what type of content should we be authoring to drive this emotional reaction in lieu of the standard linear narrative approach, when long cinematics and expensive storytelling are not ideal? So to answer that, to frame some things here, this industry has a wealth of varied perspectives, and we each see the world from our own unique lens. So my approach to answer this question is an amalgamation of my experiences and my priorities. I'm lucky enough to see the world through the lens of animation. The definition of animation really says it all. Animation, a noun. The state of being full of life or vigor. The English adjective animate, meaning alive, comes from the Latin verb animare, meaning to give life to. That's from the Webster's Dictionary. And it's important to drive this home. Animation is the art of bringing things to life. Now, being an animator is a constant reminder to dissect life, to consider not just the way a person walks, but how humanity has even evolved to a bipedal stance, how the walk being observed tells a story of that person. We observe which leg bears more weight and how the body behaves when shifting back and forth. We look for markers that may betray a person's thoughts, or how confident does this walk even look? Who's the guy in the white pants? Are they sad, happy, scared, nervous? We look for variations in the steps that may denote a medical history. We wonder where they're going or where they've come from, and this is just a walk. Although the observation of life primarily refers to living beings, this also applies to the world which supports life. Things like physics, where a walk can be described as a controlled fall governed by gravity and friction. We're aware of anthropomorphic projections of the inanimate. That car looks like it's smiling at me. We assign personality to simple things like the way a ball bounces, or the way a sock looks like on our hands, and how insanely hilarious it can be to us. Everything's alive and everything has a story. All of this observation comes from our life experiences. And even though we all see things in our own way, we all share common life experiences. We all have birthdays and listen to music. We all know the taste of our favorite meal by heart. We all suffer through the common cold. We often get a whiff of a ghostly smell that reminds us of our childhood. We all pay taxes. We all have fingernails. Essentially, we all have a lot of common ground here. Details which we may never even think about, but are acutely aware of on a social level. It's what made the Seinfeld show so incredible. We all get that that we all get angry and find humor in life's absurdities, and we can all relate. Yet, our reactions to each of these things are unique to us. A child may love having their 8th birthday with all the cake, friends, and presents, while someone turning 98 may lament their youth and choose to get shit-faced. Our context and experience, they differentiate us all. Some things that have shaped my life are my childhood time spent with my grandfather, watching cars go by, waiting for the train to rumble through town. It was working in my high school job at Chicken Delight in Hillsdale, New Jersey. It was playing Street Fighter II in the back of a musty old comic book store called the Paperback Exchange in Pearl River, New York. It was seeing Toy Story for the first time as an impressionable SCAD student. That feeling I got when I shipped my first game, or when my first child was born, or my first date with my spouse. The excruciating sadness I felt when my sister died, and the phone call I made to inform my mom. It was the paralyzing fear I felt being up on stage at GDC for the first time, and the bronchitis I had my second time. It was joining a startup with friends and no income in those early days. It was hearing my daughter tell me about her unicorn yesterday. And each of these moments, it can be used now. The emotions I felt, the details that remain in my mind. Luckily, as an animator, I'd always take a moment and dissect how I'm feeling and acting. Essentially recording them, creating a library in my head of what can be best described as animation reference or life reference. And we're all doing this every day. And when I was telling you some of my life's influences, you were very likely thinking of your own versions of those same events. That shared set of emotions and experiences help us understand that we're not alone in this universe. That we're more alike than we may actually believe. It's a form of emotional familiarity and a connection. And unlike this talk where you're so generously being patient with me right now and not interacting, games are a two-way street for communication. We can and should be using this interactivity to connect with our players on this shared experience level. But given the nature of game development, it's really easy to lose sight of this. Remember what I told you earlier about that, what an animator may see in a walk? Well, unfortunately, when making a walk animation for our games, we often forget to use nearly all of that observation. We're so focused on the complexities of creating a game that such observations can take a backseat to practical game development. We're more focused on things like, does this follow the principles of animation? Is it the correct speed for design? Does it loop properly? Does it blend in and out of all the possible states? How should I implement the difference between holding a rifle or a sword? Now, honestly, I can keep going here. The point is, there's already so much we need to know just to create a game. It's easy to get lost in the minutia.